Strong emotion and condolence have been pouring in globally following the death of nature conservationist Dr. Ian Player. The 87-year-old, who passed away over the weekend following a stroke, was lauded by the Minister of Environmental Affairs, Edna Molewa, as a leader in preserving our natural world, and said his leadership in saving the rhino from extinction in South Africa are achievements that cannot be beaten. Player was also the brother of legendary golfer Gary Player. But conservation on the continent now finds itself at a crossroads. Elephant and rhino populations have nosedived in the last decade as international poaching syndicates plunder Africa's natural resources. What has the life of an Ian Player meant for conservation, or would it have all been in vain? Now, joining us from the Department of Environmental Affairs this morning is spokesperson Albie Medise. Very good morning to you, Mr. Medise. Thank you for joining us.
Eben, good morning and thanks for the opportunity.
Can we start with just the Environmental Affairs Department's reaction to the news of Dr. Player's passing? What does it mean to the world of conservation in a wider context here in South Africa?
We are home to the biggest population of the rhino in South Africa. And that particular milestone is indicative of the type of work Dr. Player was responsible for in terms of bringing the rhino population from what was almost the brink of extinction in the Kruger National Park.
Yeah.
The Operation Rhino that he spearheaded in the 1960s was responsible for what is now, resulted in South Africa being the home of the biggest population of the rhino, the Kruger National Park being the home of the rhino population. I think for us as government, for the conservation community, for South Africa and for the global community, it's the passing away of a legend who has run his race, who played a pivotal role in terms of propelling us to being one of the mega-diverse countries in the world, being the third mega-diverse, and from a rhino population point of view, being the home of the biggest population of the rhino. And we celebrate his life, we honor his legacy.
Albie, we see pictures of these beautiful animals now on screen. There we have wonderful pictures of the rhinos. You talk about the big populations we have here in South Africa, but the reality is we are under attack from international syndicates. Our rhino populations are being culled illegally by up to 1,000 per annum at the moment. How long can we sustain this? And more importantly, where are we in the fight against specifically rhino poaching right now?
Look, Cabinet approved the integrated strategy that looks at a wide range of interventions. One of the areas is around the translocation. We have had translocation program unfolding in the Kruger National Park of moving the rhino population to the safe areas within the park itself, but also to grow the population. And we've got as well a part of our intervention. We've been seeing arrests in the recent weeks. The recent one in the last 2 weeks or so, the arrest of individuals at the OR Tambo Airport found in possession of rhino horns. We need to acknowledge that international wildlife crime is growing globally. And I think the operation that was announced recently by Interpol is indicative of that particular problem. At home, obviously, the challenges in terms of the rhino, but in other countries, the challenges are about elephant tusks in other countries in Africa. In other areas, it's about snakes and other wild animals that are being poached for their skins, for their bones and other products. But at home, our work is also, it's a multi-pronged approach. It's from the point of view of enforcement, and that's why you're seeing police making those arrests. And I think the Commissioner of Police has come out clearly to say that international wildlife crime, it has to be controlled in South Africa. And the work that we're doing with Interpol, from a point of view of enforcement, it's indicative of that. And we endorse and support Interpol's program in terms of operations aimed at arresting individuals linked to poaching. But as I'm talking to you right now, Minister Molewa is in China, part of the state visit to China.
Yeah.
We signed an MOU with China about 2 years ago. We are now at a point where we're going to sign, we have to work on an implementation plan that we have to execute the areas that we agreed on. Because MOUs by themselves are just frameworks.
Yes.
We need to start working on the work program and say, how do we ensure that we close the markets in China, in Asia, in broad as it is? We've done the same with Vietnam. We are working on a similar arrangement with Thailand. We've signed an MOU again with Mozambique. Why Mozambique? Because of the incursions we observed from the Mozambican side. So it's a war that is fought on different fronts, from the point of view of enforcement, from a point of view of international relations, from a point of view also of translocation of animals. But also it involves you and I, Eben.
Yeah.
Because when these guys arrive in South Africa, they recruit within our communities. They stay with us, we house them, they recruit our brothers, they pay them money, and when all of that has happened, the state must take responsibility. But we're saying, not on our watch will we allow the rhino to be decimated. And it's important that South Africans of all different racial groupings, of all different status, to take responsibility as well, to say we need to work together with government to fight the scourge.
You mentioned that the Chinese angle being China, discussions underway in Vietnam. What's the response been like? We understand that especially ivory is very highly regarded within China. How do you get the Chinese to change the way they think? Even in Vietnam, people buy rhino horn. We saw a documentary recently. They asked these gentlemen, why do you buy the rhino horn? They say, because it's the most expensive thing you can buy. That's why they buy it. How do you change that? How do you combat that?
Even it's a status symbol. For some of these populations, the status symbol, the ownership of the rhino horn has become like a we've arrived type of status symbol.
Yes.
It's to them what a Ferrari would be to some other people. But of course, there's also the issue around the years and years of socialization where people were made to believe. And I think the challenge is also that when there's a certain belief system in certain population groups, in certain communities, to say that this particular tree, if you were to chip off the bark of a tree and boil it in water and drink it when you've got the running tummy, it will stop the running tummy. So the similar situation that you find in those communities where there's a very traditional beliefs in the medicinal properties of those particular horns. And I think it's a belief system that you tread carefully, because you don't want to come in and behave like you know it all. That, this particular rhino horn cannot cure cancer or cannot cure this. You do all of those things mindful of the fact that it's a belief system that when you go out and communicate, you mustn't come out and be as if you're behaving like arrogant, know-it-all and westernized in the approach. But obviously we are saying to the Asian communities that irrespective of what you use the rhino horn for, there must be knowledge and there must be recognition of the fact that these particular rhinos are raised in South Africa, using South African taxpayers' money, my money and your money even.
Yes.
And these particular horns are taken out of South Africa, my money and your money taken out of South Africa, by someone who makes money somewhere else and pocket the money. And that's why we're saying it's important that all South Africans must take this particular responsibility and say, we're not going to allow the rhino to be decimated on our watch. It's not my responsibility only, it's not your responsibility only, it's our responsibility as South Africans.
Thank you for joining us. I love that. It's all of our responsibility. Thank you very much. That's the Environmental Affairs spokesperson, Albi Modise, touching on the life of Dr. Ian Player. But the message is simple. It's all of our responsibility, not just here in South Africa, but on the entire African continent, to look after our wildlife, whether it's elephants, whether it's abalone in our seas. All of us, we need to contribute to make sure that we don't lose our heritage. Thank you very much.